more so finding the consistencies and attempting to use them against your opponent in a sense, because everybody has consistencies, whether it be doing something such as feigning a certain move or having a certain feint pattern, anything of that nature, just finding those consistencies and then breaking them down. Ultimately having mind games, or the mentality for supporting mind games, or tearing down their own mind games in order to promote your own. The mindset needed for high level play, being able to adapt is what I'd say is the most important thing. Because, like Bruce Lee said, be like water. Water, it like transforms around to its environment. So if you're much like water, if you're transforming to your environment, if you're adapting, then you're automatically just countering whatever is thrown at you. So you take those consistencies that I mentioned earlier, adapt your play styles and differences in order to counter what you see, the consistency that you see, because every single player has consistencies. Just neutralizing options as you need. Mix-ups is essentially just mixing up your opponent's way of thinking. So let's use 50-50s as an example, because that is a mix-up. There could be different moves that have different properties, such as one could be horizontal, one could be thrust, or one could be slow, one could be fast. Using these different properties in order to mix up your opponent, that basically has thinking very, very hard, but you're using that thinking against them in order to obtain the upper hand. So these 50-50s, you have a 50% chance of actually getting one of them right. And most of the time, if the other person is using the 50-50s right, they're getting it wrong. It's important to play meta to know how to counter it. So if you run into meta constantly, you're going to be able to counter it at some point. You're going to figure out a way to actually play against it, unless the meta is just plain broken, which in this game it's not. Everything's able to be countered, and everything's able to be like properly countered. It's just some things are harder to counter than others. But using and playing against meta is the only way to precisely counter meta. So if you run around using meta decks and stuff like that, you'll be able to counter anybody who's running meta, because you know how to use the deck. You know its capabilities, you know its specific moves, you know what can happen, what confirms what, you know. So if there's something that's like out in the ordinary, or somebody makes a mistake, you're able to jump on that quicker than someone who doesn't know meta. But that's why it's important to play meta and fight meta. The only thing is, not a lot of people like playing or fighting meta, because meta in this game is not fun. Maybe it's fun to play, but it's not fun to play against. Like Stagger or Windfall with a 12 frame 50-50 deck is not fun to fight at all. And like added on with like certain powers or swords, things like that, it's just nowhere near fun. Swords are fun, yes, but the sword moves are honestly quite broken, because nobody really complained about them, so the devs really never did anything. But the sword moves right now are just completely broken. So yeah, bottom line is, you need to play the meta and fight the meta in order to actually get better at countering the meta and get a better understanding of the game in general. It's not a bad class per se, it's just you gotta use it differently. So you gotta use it in a more defensive manner, because before it was no recovery, you can basically dodge out of whatever you couldn't absorb. Now you're gonna get hit, so you gotta be a bit more defensive with what you do, such as just observing more, seeing what you can call, building up your own resilience, which is the little status effect thing of whenever you absorb, you get a little bit of armor. It's a resilience level 1, 2, and then 3. 3 is blocking everything. You build up 1 with each attack you absorb. Just start building that up and play a bit more defensively. Attack when you need to, and you're set. But in its state that it's currently in, and because Cult was so easily countered back then, well, not easily countered back then, it's easily countered now because of how broken it was back then. Whenever somebody plays meta, you're going to expect more people to conform to the meta and figure out how to play against it. But because it was bad before, or because it was good before, it's bad now. And that's just the nature of the beast. So you gotta play it differently. You gotta play it in a way that nobody's gonna expect it. Cult is nowhere near easy to master now, because you can get so stuck in playing it a certain way, but in the end, you're still kind of inferior to whoever mains like something like Windfall, Stagger, Phasian, Forsaken. You're still inferior to them. But yeah, Cult is nowhere near easy to master, but it is able to be mastered. The mindset that a new player has to have coming into the game is to basically keep at it. So ensure that you're always fighting high level players, you're always practicing. And it sounds cliche, but it's actually the truth. It's that way for a reason, because practice does make perfect. So if you want to be able to compete at high levels or in some form of like high level play and win most of the time, you got to fight them in order to figure out what are the consistencies, like I mentioned before. Where are ways that you can get around these consistencies? Where are ways that you can neutralize their options in order to make yourself victorious? It's all about coming in with an open mindset, able to receive criticism, ask for help, ask for somebody to teach you, and then just be on your merry way. You can't get better by not fighting anybody or not fighting people that you don't like. The only reason I'm able to actually counter individuals who are playing like meta or stagger or something like that, which is what most people have issues with, is because I was never afraid to fight the individuals who played meta or stagger. I would always just stay in the match. So I'd say possibly actually being able to fight high level players, pick apart their minds and things like that, be open to criticism. I probably have to agree with what Glock said in your previous section of the series. Windfall probably number 1. Maybe Stagger. Not too sure. I think Forsaken is still a little bit better than Stagger, but the only thing is Forsaken's recovery is kind of crazy. So it also doesn't have any movement, so you can't get those free passes with something like Windfall, where if you dodge early, you're still out of the way. No, you're staying in one place and you got crazy recovery, and sometimes your parries don't even give you stamina back. They don't give you confirms. They never give you confirms depending on the host. So I'd say probably Windfall, Stagger, Phasian as well, because Phasian has the possibility of making 33-33-33s instead of 50-50s, because the additional front punch, which also counts as a guard break, as well as the different parries being able to also hit you and have some form of advantage on them. So yeah, Windfall, Stagger, Phasian maybe. Stop being afraid to fight me, please. Because in order to, and that applies to anybody that you may be afraid to fight, in order to get better, you need to fight people. Like I said, the consistencies, You can see them in just about every single player. So if you keep on fighting people and you keep on gathering up these consistencies and these play styles, you'll be able to counter things off rip if they're common with something you've already seen before. So stop being afraid to fight me. Stop being afraid to fight Curly. Stop being afraid to fight people like Glock. Anybody who's higher level because you're afraid of losing or something like that. It doesn't matter. In the long run, it's going to help you get better because you're able to efficiently counter whatever is being given to you and figure out different ways to advance yourself. So stop being afraid to fight people. Stop being afraid to play the game. That's just my advice mainly.